Today, a cyclone still possible near East Africa on our tropical weather bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical weather bulletin for April 30th. We're code blue once again for this area of interest that we've got off the coast of Eastern Africa, not far from the Comoros Islands. It's starting to look a little bit better, but still some ways away from becoming a tropical cyclone. Elsewhere, there are no areas of interest, but one or two things to watch as we get into the following week. Well, it's 32 days until the Atlantic hurricane season begins, and there's still no areas of interest here, which is obviously a good thing. We published a short yesterday showing a little extratropical system southeast of Newfoundland, which looked interesting, and severe weather in the US has gone off for a little bit here. 15 days until the Eastern Pacific begins, so we're not very far away now until things start up there. Really getting quite close, but still no signs of life yet. As we know in the Eastern Pacific, it's got a very strict start date and things can form quite quickly after that. In the Western Pacific, things are looking awfully quiet here as well, with just a few thunderstorms blowing up over the southern Philippine Islands and a little bit around Indonesia as well, where that volcano blew up yesterday, or early this morning local time actually. North Indian Ocean looking quiet, the Australian region looking very quiet, really nothing to look at here. A few thunderstorms though off the coast of Papua New Guinea up towards the Solomon Islands, and a little bit of cloud down the east coast of Australia. In the southwest Indian Ocean, of course, we've upped that area of interest now to 60% as it continues to move very slowly in a sort of southwesterly direction. Models have different ideas as to how far it will move westwards, or how soon it will move westwards, and indeed how far south it can go. And in the South Pacific, nothing to look at here as well. It's gone even quieter compared to what we were looking at yesterday. There were quite a few thunderstorms blowing up. Now we've just got a little one there, well to the northeast of Samoa. Let's check up on that AOI then. It is right next to the island of Grand Terre, which is the westernmost of the Seychelles, 87 kilometers. 131 from Assumption Island, 200 from Astave, 335 from Gran Glorioso, and 481 from Grande Comore on the Comoros Islands, the most populous of those islands, and with the capital Moroni. Well, this system could go further towards the west after that as well and make landfall in Tanzania. If it does do that, it will be weakening and there'll barely be anything left of it, we think. Here's satellite imagery today, and you can see the progress of this system, which is blowing up a little bit better convection than it was yesterday. Rotation, I'm still not so sure about. Very elongated if there is one at all, and so we're not ready to call this a tropical cyclone. When will it happen? Well, if it does, looks like it will be maybe in 24 to 36 hours, or perhaps a little bit later. Of course, how quickly it can form will seriously affect how strong it will be able to get. Now, models indicating that we're probably only going to get a maximum of 50 miles per hour from this system, and maybe not even that anymore, with pressures in the upper 990s. As of right now, we're giving it an estimate of 30 miles per hour, a pressure of 1004 millibars. There's the convection looking better on that infrared view, but you can see just off the east there, a big area there as well, which might be affecting its ability to get that circulation sorted. There's the US right now, for those interested, with that big broad line. That was that major severe weather event the other day. This is the Eastern Pacific, showing just a few little areas there in the intertropical convergence zone, a little bubbling up of systems there. And in the Western Pacific, there's quite a wet day in store for the southern Philippine Islands, particularly over western Mindanao, which is getting quite a bit of convection right now. Looks like a little isolated storm up there in Luzon. In the Bay of Bengal, it's looking like this. The southern tip of India really getting quite a bit of convection there right now, and Sri Lanka just getting the edge of that too, but the Bay of Bengal proper is looking pretty desolate. Let's take a look at sea surface temperatures across the globe then, and this is how it's looking in the eastern Pacific. One or two spots now, quite a few actually, over 30 degrees Celsius, but look south there, you can see the cooler waters there, real sign, telltale sign of that La Nina approaching. In the Atlantic, a nice loop current there, pushing temperatures up to 28 degrees in one or two spots of the Gulf. And in the western Pacific, extremely warm waters in the South China Sea, over 30 degrees Celsius, pushing 32 in fact. Eastern coast of the Philippines still quite warm, but not as warm, and Guam currently got around 28. Bay of Bengal is sizzling, look at that, in the main area there, 32 degrees Celsius, and a similar story for the Andaman Sea. Off the coast of Myanmar, temperatures over 30 degrees there as well. Eastern India, the lowest at around 28. The area where this system will be forming then, around 29, maybe 30 degrees Celsius near the Comoros Islands and to the coast of Tanzania. Off Australia, still some very warm waters there off the Western Australia, and one or two spots of the Gulf of Grand Terre, but they are starting to decrease now, and the chances of cyclones are fading. South Pacific also starting to cool, but slowly, still holding on to some very warm waters, pushing 30 degrees near Fiji and Vanuatu, and not been too much to talk about in this basin this season. Compared to average, the orange zones are above, the blue zones are below. Eastern Pacific, you can see there either side of the tropics as cold anomalies, especially that equatorial area, significant. The Atlantic, much warmer than average in the main development region, but interesting to see a cool pool now in the subtropical zones, and also one or two spots of the Gulf. And in the Western Pacific, things are generally looking above and near average near the Philippines. Oceanic heat content is still very high in very low latitudes of the South Pacific Ocean, and looking towards the North Pacific it looks like this, quite a few areas that are bubbling up now, including in the East Pacific. Looks like we might get quite a bit of fuel, certainly more than we had last year for the East Pac, coming up to the early season this year. So what do the models have in order for us then? Well, first of all, here's the development of this system. Happens on the 1st or the 2nd of May, like I said, up to 48 hours. And GFS now wants it to move almost directly westwards and then a little bit northwards actually after that. So it makes a clear landfall well into Tanzania, although it does start to weaken quite a bit before it gets there. Looks like it's trending away from impacting Grand Comore, moving towards the west there rather than southwest, and so they may be spared tropical storm force winds. However, will they be spared the rainfall? The answer is probably no. Here it is, the rainfall projection over the next few days. Well, the chances are the totals have fallen a little bit for the Comoros, but for the other areas being affected, eastern Tanzania and the island that it's closest to right now, they're going to get quite a lot of rain. Grand Terre, up to 17 inches of rainfall there, which is over 400 millimeters, and a similar amount off the coast of Tanzania, 16 inches, that's 400 millimeters, and on the Comoros Islands there, 6 inches, which is over 150 millimeters of rainfall. Quite a lot. Well, into the medium range, things look like this then in the southeast Indian Ocean. A little development here of a potential tropical cyclone. We've been watching this for a little while too, but we're not confident enough to give any chances on this yet. There it is, becoming a tropical storm quite late on, actually towards the 10th of May, maybe even another one following in behind it there. So it's a little bit curious, this forecast, and a little bit doubtful. But that's what the GFS is putting out there for the 10-day period over there in the southeast Indian Ocean. And what on earth do we have here? There's a tropical cyclone up there off the coast near the Indonesian islands. I am not sure whether that's going to happen or not. And then that second one forming just off the top end of Australia in the later part of that period, and it really gets quite lost there. Typical for an early May system in this area, very short-lived and not particularly strong, but it does actually get quite going there in that early part just before it reaches land and then weakens off very quickly as it does so. Big question marks over that area then, clearly. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts, which are still waiting to be worn as long as we're waiting for that goddamn storm Hone. Well, in the Scilly range, we're still looking at this area now, and I gotta tell you, for those who were watching yesterday, that West Pacific storm on the GFS long range, gone. The North Indian Ocean storm in the long range, gone. And all we're left with is this, what becomes a remnant for quite a while there. Doesn't last very long, this tropical cyclone. That second one trying to form behind it doesn't look like it manages it in the end, and so we're just left with that for the long range, and so it looks like we might be waiting even longer before we get another significant cyclone, and that's after our quietest April in 13 years. Well, looking back on a much more active April, certainly we had Cyclone Quang, the Quang, approaching the coast of Australia on this day in 2015. We were there covering it live. This was 9 years ago today, since 2015. Can you believe that? We can't. And there is a beautiful picture of Cyclone Quang near its peak intensity, which occurred in the evening hours local time, afternoon evening hours in Australia, before it ended up reaching very close to the coast. And of course it weakened. Well, back to today then, and we are code blue for this East African system. The first storm in the Atlantic, though, will be Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, if it's this year, it's Hone. We have been waiting 5 years for that storm now. In the Western Pacific, Awinyar is next up, and in the North Indian Ocean, it's Remal. Those are two other names we've been waiting for quite a bit, but it's just been a very quiet tropics for a very long time. Most people have gotten bored of waiting for the next storm. And in the Southern Hemisphere, the next name in the Australian region is Robin, if we get there. This season that is. Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Hidayah, and in the South Pacific, it will be Peter. That is all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. It looks like we'll be back again for another one tomorrow.